Hello there, welcome to Proper DIY. This week I'm going to show you how to install the easiest lights in your attic or loft ever. I've got work to do up here in the attic, like improving the insulation, boarding it out and putting in some storage. So I think it's a really good idea that the first thing I do is get some decent lighting in here, which is then going to make all those subsequent jobs a lot easier. So what I'm going to be installing is these 6-inch pendant type lights. Now I've gone for these rather than fluorescent tubes or LED battens because my loft is around 16 meters or 52 feet long. So to get coverage everywhere, I would need quite a few strip lights, which would work out a lot more expensive than using these cheap pendant type fittings. The other advantage of using these is that I can actually do all the fiddly work, actually the wiring in between fitting and fitting, in the workshop where it's a lot more comfortable to work. And only once that's all complete, bring it up here to install, rather than doing all the wiring in here in the semi-dark while balancing on thin joists, which just isn't fun. The reason I said earlier that these are going to be the easiest attic lights to fit is that I'm not actually going to break into existing cables to wire them up. To do this, you really have to know what you're doing and what cables are in your attic or loft. In mine, there's a combination of power cables going to showers, there's lighting cables, switching cables, and even low voltage cables as well. So to make things really easy, I'm going to power all my lights here up in the attic off of a 3-pin plug into a socket on the landing. Now that does mean that every time I come up here, I'll have to spend another few seconds plugging it in, but I don't plan to be up here all the time. And the extra main advantage is it means that I don't need an electrician. I don't have to break in to any of the cables in my attic, and it means that any other DIYer can do exactly the same job. Before I show you what materials I bought, I'd just like to take a couple of seconds to ask you to please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. There's videos coming out all the time on all aspects of DIY, and it'd be great to have you along for the ride as well. And whether you've just subscribed or you've been watching for some time, make sure you hit the bell icon next to the subscribed button, because that will alert you every time I put a video out to make sure you don't miss anything. And the bell icon is just down there, just next to the subscribe button. Anyway, I'm getting a bit uncomfortable standing on two very thin joists here in the dark. So let's go down to the workshop and I'll show you what components I'm going to use. I've got everything here for the job, like the pendants and the bulbs, or the cables, even the cable ties and the plug as well. One good thing about these pendant type fittings I'm going to be using, especially in lofts that are fairly small with low headroom, is that if you do knock them with your head or with the Christmas decorations when you're going up there, they tend to bounce out the way, as opposed to a fixed fitting that if you knocked it could actually break the bulb. I've got little chance of that happening because also these modern bulbs that I'm using these days, although they look like a traditional bulb, this is actually plastic and the LED light fitting is actually inside there, so very little chance of breaking that, and if you ever do, really it's not going to cause you too much problems. The cable that I'm going to be using today is 1 square millimeter flex cable. Now I've gone for flex cable because it's going to be a lot easier to use and a lot easier to manipulate when I'm working up in the loft. This is rated up to 10 amps and at 240 volts that's 2,400 watts. So if I'm using lights like these are about 10 watts. In theory I could put 240 of these on a cable like this before I overload it. Now obviously I'm not going to be getting anywhere near that. I think I'm putting 12 of these up in the attic, so I'm easily on the right side of the capacity of this cable. Having said that, if this cable is rated at a maximum of 10 amps and on the end of it I'm going to be putting a 13 amp fused plug, that means that if this is ever overloaded, the cable is going to fail first, probably by melting and catching on fire. So what I'm going to do just to protect that is change the 13 amp fuse in the plug to a 5 amp fuse. So if the system is ever overloaded, the fuse is definitely going to blow first. Anyway, enough of that. I've got to make up a string of 12 lights. So I think it's time that I start cutting some cable. So that's the last wire cut. So I thought I'll show you how I'm going to wire these roses up. Now inside these roses, the first thing you see is that there's a couple of little bits of insulation. This earth insulation is to put over the bare earth if you're using a twin and earth. And then you've got also a brown piece of insulation you can put over the neutral, the blue section of your switching cable to indicate that it's a switching cable. But I'm not going to need either of those because my earth has already got an insulation outside and I'm not using any switches. So on the inside of a typical ceiling rose, you'll come across 3 connection blocks. The first one is connected to the neutral for the light fitting. The second one will be empty, and the third one, which should generally only be 2 rather than 3, will be connected to the live that goes to the light bulb. This is so the incoming neutral and live can come into these 2 terminal blocks. The outgoing neutral and live get connected to these that go on to the next pendant, and that means that you can put a switch-in cable between this terminal and this terminal that switches this cable and gives power to this cable that goes to the light bulb, and that turns the light on and off. In my case, I don't want that. All of these are either going to be on or off. I haven't got any switches in this circuit at all. So while I'm wiring these together in a sort of daisy chain fashion, I'll also have to move this live power cable that goes to the light bulb from this terminal to this terminal. That means that they're always all connected, both the incoming, outgoing and the cables going to the light bulb. This is all pretty fiddly work, which isn't difficult but does take a little bit of time, especially when you need 12 of them. Although I am glad I'm not having to do this up in the loft. It's obviously important that these wires get a good connection with the terminal block, so making sure the screws clamp down on copper rather than insulation and doing up the screws tightly is important. After tightening each one, I give it a quick tug to make sure it's properly connected. The 2 earth wires I twist together to help them get into the connector block, although they're not really doing anything as these are plastic fittings, but I diligently connect them anyway, so I have them just in case for the future. So I've just cut a load of these 100mm square MDF pieces, which is just a little bit bigger than the base on these pendants. The theory being that is if I can fix these pendants to this MDF now with a hole in the back for the cables to come out, then once I'm up in the attic, it's going to be far easier for me to fix this whole thing to the roof truss with just maybe 1 or 2 screws rather than messing around in here. So all I'm trying to do once again is to cut down the amount of work I've got to do once I'm back up in the attic. I have 2 runs of lights that I'll be joining together using this terminal junction box to then go off to the plug. One thing I've learnt about junction boxes over the years is to use a high rated box like a 20 or 30 amp, even if you don't need the capacity, as they are physically a lot bigger than the 5 amp boxes, so far easier to work with for just a few pennies more. Merry Christmas. Well, it's not Christmas actually, but it does feel like it. So I've got all the bulbs wired up, they're all tested. I've got a group of 5 here and a group of 7. That's because one goes in one direction from the loft hatch and one goes in the other. And I've even fitted the screws to the MDF to make it even easier to fix once I'm in the loft. But before I go and show you how I fix these, I think it's a really good time to tell you that today's video is being sponsored by ITS for all the tools you need. And this is really good timing because ITS today, on the day this video goes out, the 5th of November, launches their Black Friday sale, or should I say Black Fridays, because each Friday for the next 4 weeks they're releasing more and more equipment, so you need to go back and keep looking at their website each Friday. I've just been having a look at the first batch and there's a couple of things I'm really impressed with. One thing that's caught my eyes is Makita impact driver body at £50 including VAT is a really good deal. However, if you prefer your tools to be yellow rather than blue, there's another good deal I've spotted here. It's a DeWalt twin pack of impact driver and drill driver, similar to the ones I use. It comes with 2 batteries, so this is a really good starter kit and the sort of thing that will last you many, many years. But as you can imagine, stocks are limited, so when they're gone, they're gone. So if you do see something that you fancy, I would highly recommend that you put your name to it fairly quickly. As usual, there's next day delivery when you order by 7 PM, and with the ITS price promise, they won't be beaten on price from Toolstation or Screwfix. I'm definitely going to be checking out their website every Friday morning for the next few weeks because there's some really good deals here and I'm really interested to see what else they come up with. And as usual, if you put in the code PROPERDIY, you'll get this free goodie bag with your first order. Anyway, I've been avoiding going up into the attic long enough. I think I better get back to work and I think I better go and fix some lights. I can't tell you how tiring it is to walk around the attic, having to make sure that you only step on the joists, knowing that one incorrect move means time and cost repairing a damaged ceiling. Without any boarding on the floor, it's also impossible to use a step ladder up here, so I'll be fitting these lights as high as I can now and then be raising them to their final positions once I've got the flooring down. However, I'm still overstretching to fix them on this timber board and almost lose my balance. I'm on tiptoe on the joists here, trying to fix a couple of inches higher than I ever should. I'm not tall enough. Jeez. So there you go, fully installed and operational. And as I said, once I get the flooring down, I'm going to lift all these up a little bit higher just to get them out the way and further away from the action. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please check out the other ones on my channel. And as I said earlier, please subscribe and hit that bell icon. It helps me immensely. So until next time, quite like doing that. I'll see you then.